Well, welcome, ChangePoint family, and it is exactly as Scott said. Today we are talking about an upcoming course, Financial Peace University Online. And to tell us more about that, I'm joined by Becky Moore. Becky, hello.
Hello, good morning.
Welcome to the Commons.
Thank you.
I think you are our first ever repeat guest on the Commons.
Oh, I got asked back. I appreciate that.
I think this is, you're it.
Do I get a plaque or no?
No, we don't have any plaques. You get Treasure in Heaven. That's,
thank you.
That's what we distribute here, for Treasure in Heaven. So first off, let's just start with what is Financial Peace University, because it's a little different than the other types of courses and classes we offer here. What is FPU?
So Financial Peace University is a Dave Ramsey course. Dave is a financial guru out of Tennessee, and if you've never heard his podcast or heard of him before, extremely entertaining, very funny, but also very informative and, in my opinion, life-changing. It's been a life changer for me. So Financial Peace University is a 9-week course. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hours a week, once a week for 9 weeks. We get together and we talk about finances and how do you do it well, and how do you do it God's way, and what does that look like? So we dive in, we break it down. There's teachings from Dave, some group discussions. It's just a nice, robust conversation and community to be plugged into.
It's awesome. So really quick details for people who already know about Financial Peace. If you're like, yeah, I know what Financial Peace is, how do I sign up and when does it start? When does it start?
It starts February 3rd. It's going to run on Wednesday nights at 6:30, and it runs for once a week for 9 weeks. So we'll wrap up on March 31st.
So February 3rd to March 31st, you can sign up today in the ChangePoint app. If you open up the ChangePoint app, here's the ChangePoint app. Third option down says Financial Peace. Register for Financial Peace University Online. So that's pretty simple.
That easy.
Easy to get set up. So you mentioned that it was kind of life-changing for you. So you have a finance background. You work in kind of the financial industry. Mm-hmm. Are you coming to this as kind of a guru? Did you come in as a client first? How did you get involved with FPU?
Yeah, so I was actually introduced to FPU a couple of years ago, I guess many years ago now, but I was a single mom. I felt like I was a little bit lost. I didn't have control of my finances. It was a scary time for me, and there's something about our finances that are so at the core of our lives that when our finances aren't under control, our whole life feels out of control. And so I was to the point where I needed a change. I needed something, and I didn't know what that was. And I had a good friend from ChangePoint, actually one of my godly girls, Josie Wilson, who said, "Have you ever heard of Dave Ramsey?" And I don't think she knew what she was starting back then, but it's really it was so life-changing for me, because as a single parent, trying to raise my boy the best that I could, and not only take care of him the way that I should, but also teach him how to do this. How do you manage money? What does that look like? And how do I start him young enough that going forward, this is not a struggle for him, that he knows what to do and how to do it. And so it was a learning experience for me, but also an example for me to model for him. My income didn't change at that time, but what I did with my income shifted. And so it's less about the knowledge and more about the behavior. And when you get plugged into a community like this and get both, you get the knowledge and the accountability that comes with it. That's where the change comes. And if I look back to where I was to where I've come now, it's just a night and day. It literally changed that part of my life. So.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking about, this kind of financial management stuff. There's no required course for this in high school.
No.
Right? Have you seen that meme that says, "I'm so glad that I studied Algebra 2 instead of financial management. That'll come in handy this parallelogram season," or whatever, right?
I graduated college, or I graduated high school knowing the Pythagorean theorem, but I couldn't do my taxes. I knew how to balance a checkbook because my mother was in banking, but nobody taught me at school. Nobody taught me about saving and credit and all of those components. And so you leave with good knowledge, but not always practical in this arena.
Absolutely. And the way that people make income, the way that finances are handled today has changed so much with COVID and the internet. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's so different. So Now, we were talking beforehand about the baby steps
Yes.
of Financial Peace University. So what are the baby steps of
Yeah.
FPU? Like that's intriguing to me. Tell me about the baby steps.
So the concept of the baby steps is that if you're doing too many things, you're not doing anything well. And so we know we're supposed to save. We know we're supposed to pay off debt. We know we're supposed to invest for retirement. We need to save for kids' college. We need to pay off our house early. We should be generous and give. What does that look like? And if we're trying to do all of that at once, everything is just sort of being half done, or maybe not even half. And the point of Dave's curriculum, and this isn't something Dave created, this process, but he put it into a way that our minds can kind of wrap around, for me at least, where it's one step at a time. So we're going to focus all of our energy into this one thing, and when that's checked off, we can move to the next piece. So there's 7 baby steps. Baby step number 1 is $1,000 in a starter emergency fund, or the baby emergency fund, they call it. They stopped calling it that because people were saying, I don't want babies. But this is a starter emergency fund. So that comes from, when you have an emergency, a flat tire, a water heater goes out, you need a new battery in your car, something like that. Most people go, well, it's no big deal. I'll put it on my credit card, right? And in these baby steps, we're trying to not use credit. We're trying to get control of our finances so that we can leverage it to build wealth and to give back. And so the first step is get that $1,000 in the bank account. I was reading a statistic, almost 60% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency with cash. So they don't have the money in the bank. And this was pre-pandemic. And so I think it was 56% of Americans couldn't cover this simple emergency, and they reach for their credit card or their home equity line of credit or whatever that looks like. And then because almost 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, when they lose a job, they've got this big credit card bill they've run up and no way to pay it. And that leads into this whole other thing, right? We can't put a roof over our head. We can't do all these other things. So the point of the starter emergency fund is stop using credit and get prepared if something comes along. It's not enough for a full emergency fund. That's why it's our starter. Baby step 2 is to pay off all consumer debt. So everything but your home gets paid off in baby step 2, student loans, medical bills, credit cards, cars, any little thing you financed. When I started this, I had a TV, a dining room table, a laptop. I mean, I financed everything, right? And so baby step 2 is get rid of that, because if you're throwing money at the bank, you're not growing your money the way that it was intended. And you can't use it. You can't leverage it for the good in the long haul. Baby step 3 is to grow that starter emergency fund from $1,000 to 3 to 6 months of your expenses. So you go through, calculate that out once your debt is paid off, and grow that emergency fund. I'm a 6-month kind of girl. I like the security, but depending on what kind of career you're in, or like, are you in a volatile career where you might be laid off, or maybe you're in real estate or commission-based, something that's really up and down, it's good to have that 6 months. And then once those 3 are done, so we're only focusing on those as we go. Once we check them off, we move to the next one. Baby steps 4, 5, and 6 are done simultaneously. So that's, say, 15% towards your retirement, save for kids' college, and pay off your house early. So once we're done with 1 through 3, we're gonna start 15% into retirement. If you have children or children that will be going to college, start saving for that. And there's some ways that we go through how much do we save. And then baby step 6 is everything else that's left, throw it at the house and get that house paid off early. The people who do this plan, on average, pay off their home in 7 years. And then baby step 7 is the fun part. It's where we get to grow the money and give a whole bunch of it away. And that's kind of the point. And that's one of the things that really resonated with me with Dave is he said, what if God's people used God's money God's way? Well, because it's all his anyway at the end. And it was really powerful for me to think through that. I do a lot of work in the community and nonprofits, and that's kind of my world. And I see the need, and it's everything from, it's changed a lot in the last year and a half, right? What need has looked like. But it's people who don't have homes, and it's people who don't have food, and it's people who don't have transportation, or they just need a little something. And it's, you hear that, what if I was able to do that thing because I had my finances together and change a life, like really be that person that steps in and shows Jesus and makes them go, what's that thing that made her do this, and bring them to Jesus, So it's ultimately, how do we grow our money and give a bunch of it away? And so it's baby step number 7 is live and give like no one else. And that's where we get to enjoy the fruits of the labor, and then also change the community with it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's awesome. So I have some friends here at Change Point, and they're big FPU fans. I won't call you out. You know who you are. No, they're big FPU fans. But one of their favorite parts was kind of the community that formed even in the class. Like they went in for financial advice and left with lifelong friends.
Yeah.
Is that something you see every class? Is this?
Yeah, actually, that's how it started for me. When I first took this class, it kind of reminds me of like a Weight Watchers component, right? Like people who go to the meetings lose 4 times more weight. And that kind of stuck in my head when I took the class. And once you've taken the class, you're an alumni, and you can come back as much as you want. I took the class 7 times, and it just kept coming back, right? It was the same material. I was learning new stuff every time, but I was meeting new people, and I was meeting new accountability partners, and especially as a single person, it put people in my life who were going to give me the advice of, no, don't buy that thing. Think through, like, where are we? What's the goal? What are we focusing on? As opposed to, the shopping buddy who's like, yeah, it's a great purse. Go ahead and get it. So I wanted the accountability that was speaking to my goals and where I was trying to go. So I just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. And it was for the community. And that's when Rob and Karen Cowart used to teach this class when I was taking it. And Rob just kind of put his arm around me as he and Karen were preparing to retire and said, I think it's time for you to teach this because you've seen it 7 times. And so since then, it's been really fun because the community continues to grow, and it's every time somebody comes and plugs in, and you see the light bulbs go off, and you see that my favorite part actually is one, seeing people gain control in the way that I was able to, and feel that kind of freedom, but also relationships change, and you start to see, when a husband and a wife communicate about money. It's a whole new ballgame for some people. Like they've never talked about this before, and money, because money is so behavioral, we start to see. I watch this, and I see these couples who sometimes are, they're sitting so far apart on night 1, and then by nights 5, 6, 7, they're sitting closer together. Like it's just this really cool. You see communication happening, and so it's good external community, but it's also good internal relationship building for you and your partner to figure out how to do this together. Like we're on the same team.
And you mentioned marriage. Money is not going to make you have an awesome marriage, but it can make you have a terrible marriage.
Yes, yeah. Number one cause of divorce in America is money fights and money problems. And so this is actually, it's a wonderful premarital course. If anybody is looking to get married, do some pre-work. Be proactive in talking about this with your spouse early, because if this is the number one thing that will break you up, let's talk about it. Let's get it out of the way. Let's create a plan and put that together. And for people, we've had people come through who've been married over 50 years, and they've just never talked about their finances. And you see this whole new kind of beautiful bud start to bloom after 50 years, and it's a really cool thing to watch. So we do talk a lot about relationships, and because money is relational, that's a big component of it.
Why do you think it is so hard for people to talk about money, especially with people they care about?
I don't know. I think there's oftentimes, honestly, a lot of shame around money. And I think you have to be vulnerable, and it's a potential for conflict, and people like to avoid that. And we walk through, Dave's big thing is you typically in a relationship, you have somebody who's the nerd and somebody who's the free spirit. And then you have somebody who's a spender and somebody who's a saver. And the nerd is not always the saver. Sometimes the nerd is a spender.
Preach.
In my marriage, I am the nerd. I like the spreadsheets. If I can get something to do, a formula or an algorithm, I'm like, come look at this. This is it's a hobby kind of thing
100%.
for me. But I'm also the spender. And so we were I've got some new furniture in my house. My husband hadn't seen, that I painted and put together. And I like hobbies, and I like those sorts of things. And I think it's kind of one of those things that carries a lot of different emotions with it, and it's just easier to not talk about it. We think it's easier to not talk about it, but what it does is creates barriers for us with, and that's not to say, every person that comes along, we need to announce how much debt we have, and we need to announce what we make every year, and things like that. But when it comes to our spouse, right. It's such a foundational piece of our lives that they need to be involved with that, and we owe it to them to talk about that. Because it's going to help make our marriage successful. So,
or even beyond married people, I just think if you're in a position right now where finances are difficult, where you're facing these kinds of challenges and these kinds of stresses, and you are kind of feeling that shame, it is really challenging to come out of your shell and even talk to an advisor or counselor about what's I don't want people to know, right?
Yeah.
I'm good, I'm looking good, I'm
Yeah.
doing fine. So how do you guys handle that? Does the environment just lend itself to being able to talk about it?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's as much or as little as you want to talk about it. And we don't make you show us your budget. We don't make you show us anything. We collect a financial snapshot, which is anonymous, and it's actually really fascinating because what we collect is data on how much collective debt we have in the class, consumer debt, how much collective savings we have, and how many credit cards we have open. And we collect that on week 1, and then by week 9 we do it again. And it's really interesting to see what happens. I mean, we've had classes where we have like $3.5 million in consumer debt. And these are large classes.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had large classes, small classes, but it's really, I think it's nice for people to not feel alone. And you start to realize, oh, I'm not the only person who has mounting student loan debt, or I'm not the only person who racked up all these credit cards or has significant medical debt, or who's on the brink of bankruptcy. I'm not alone. And that creates some safety, I think, and some permission for us to speak lovingly into each other, to say, I'm here with you, like I'm in this ugly with you. And especially right now, a lot of this, the numbers that we have in the statistics and everything are pre-pandemic. And we know post-pandemic, it's going to be a whole different story. When we're talking paycheck to paycheck and all of a sudden paychecks are gone. Like, what does that look like? How does that, and it's a scary time for people. And that's been a real aha for me, is how different would we have handled this pandemic if we all had no consumer debt and we had 6 months of an emergency fund? Like we would have handled it a little differently, I think. I know I would have. And so I think it's a little less scary. Life gets a little less scary when you have community and when you have permission you have somewhere to go, somewhere to turn to for advice. And I still get, people who went to my class 4 years ago who will find me on Facebook or shoot me a text message and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing, or I thought about that. What do you think? And it just creates a partnership where we can be in this together.
Well, we are, if you can believe it, we're actually like running short of time. Can you believe that?
No.
That's how fast a half hour goes on the Commons.
Yeah,
it's just like, bam.
When you're having fun. I mean, I could talk about this all day. So
we are. So a couple more things I wanted to just get from you while you were a guest on the Commons. I know you're actively involved with one of our ministry partners, Beacon Hill. Can you tell us a little about your involvement with them? And
yeah, so God kept putting Beacon Hill in my life in a lot of really creative ways, I will say. And I had no idea who they were, and I just fell in love with the work they were doing. And so I went and knocked on their door, actually, and I said, are you looking for board members? And joined their board in July of 2019. And it has been such a blessing to see God work, like very clearly and obviously work through an organization where, we have times where we're in the middle of a board meeting and we're struggling with something and we just stop and pray. And we know we're supposed to do the thing and we don't know how we're going to do the thing, but God said to do the thing, so we do the thing. And it works out every time. And it's been such a blessing for me to see the lives changed, the families reunited, the kids who, we had a kid last year who went to, I think it was 19 different foster homes, and he got adopted last year. And it's the stories, the beautiful stories of redemption that come out of Beacon Hill is just, it's amazing. It's absolutely incredible to see God work, very clearly work through an organization. And then they have an amazing boutique with some really great upcycled furniture. So not only does my heart get blessed, so does my house with some pretty cool furniture. So.
That's awesome. Did you see Kristins' presentation at the missions conference?
Yes.
Yeah, she kind of led with that story, or she led with that as one of her
Yes.
kind of anonymized introductory stories. If you have not seen Kristen Bierma's talk, it's talk number 3 from the missions conference that we launched last week. Get over to changepointalaska.com/remodel and click on Kristen from Beacon Hill. She's talk number 3, really, really fantastic stuff.
She's a huge blessing. We're super blessed to have her.
So because we are so short of time, I got to ask my final question. Is there anything that you would like to say to our ChangePoint family that I did not set you up for?
I would just challenge you to come and check it out. Come and try it. Everything that we teach is, if you don't like it, don't do it. And Dave says that. He said, you know what? If you get completely out of debt and you hate it, go back in. Like it's totally.
It's easy to go in.
You won't, but you'll. So I challenge you to try something new, be vulnerable, and get control of this component so that you can change lives. I think it change your life and change your marriage, but change the community too. There's a lot of need out there, and it's our call to step into that. And this is a great way to learn how to do that. So
Now, there is a cost associated with the class, correct? What's
Yeah.
the cost? How does that work?
it's just under $130. So, and that provides you with the workshop, all the online materials, and then there's kind of this online community that you can use with some really cool nerdy tools. But also, it makes you an alumni. And so, just like me, if you want to come back over and over again at no cost. And so, it's a lifetime kind of opportunity where if you even 10 years from now, if you need a refresher on this, come back to the course and check it out. So, and we certainly have opportunities if finances are a burden, we don't want them to be. And so we want to encourage people to come. You can contact me through the website. You can contact Rick Steele. We will make sure that it gets taken care of because we ultimately getting folks into this course is the goal.
Yeah, so let me just really quick restate that for anybody who didn't so we're super duper clear. If that financial cost is a burden to you, you've lost your job, you're not able to pull it off, let us know, tell us what's going on, and we will find a way to sponsor you into this course because we want you to succeed financially.
Yeah, it's really important.
So the course dates, give us the dates and times one more time.
Yep, February 3rd, Wednesday night, 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. You don't have to turn your video on if you don't want to. Eat your dinner right there, and we'll go through it together. We'll walk through this together and set you up for financial success.
All right, and you can register online on the Community Life page, changepointalaska.com/adults, or in the ChangePoint app. It's the third option from the top. Becky, thanks so much for joining us in the comments.
Thanks for having me again. I
And
appreciate it.
thank you, ChangePoint family. God bless you. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Sunday.